Walking into his sold-out concert at Yankee Stadium, Fat Joe thought this was going to be the greatest night of his career. But sitting in the front row was a face he hadn't seen in 20 years. Isabella Rodriguez, his first love, the woman who had broken his heart and disappeared without explanation when he was just starting his music career. She looked exactly the same, but the expression on her face told him she wasn't there to reminisce about old times. In her hand was an envelope that would either complete his life or destroy everything he had built. Because what Isabella had come to tell him after 2 decades of silence would change not just his past, but his entire future. If you want to discover how first love can return with secrets that rewrite everything you thought you knew about your own life, hit subscribe right now because this story will take you on an emotional journey you'll never forget. July 4th, 2009, Yankee Stadium, New York. This wasn't just another concert for Fat Joe. This was his homecoming, his ultimate victory lap. A kid from the South Bronx headlining at Yankee Stadium, with 54,000 fans celebrating not just his music but his journey from the streets to superstardom. Every seat was filled, every moment was being recorded, and Joey felt like he was living in a dream he had imagined since childhood. But as he scanned the crowd during his opening song, his eyes stopped on a face that made his heart skip a beat for reasons that had nothing to do with performance adrenaline. Isabella Rodriguez was sitting in the front row, looking exactly as beautiful as she had 20 years ago when she was 17 and he was 18, when they thought they would be together forever, before everything fell apart in ways he still didn't understand. Isabella wasn't smiling, wasn't singing along, wasn't celebrating like the thousands of fans around her. She was watching him with an intensity that was both familiar and unsettling. In her hand was a manila envelope, and even from the stage, Joey could see that whatever was inside had been important enough to bring her back into his life after 2 decades of complete silence. But you haven't seen the real reason she disappeared 20 years ago. The story of Isabella and Joey began in 1989, when they were both teenagers in the South Bronx trying to figure out their lives and their futures. Joey was just starting to take his music seriously, performing at local clubs and dreaming of making it big. Isabella was studying to become a nurse, planning to help people in their community, while Joey conquered the world with his rhymes. They were inseparable, planning a future together that included marriage, children, and building something beautiful out of the chaos of their neighborhood. Isabella was Joey's biggest supporter, attending every performance, helping him write lyrics, believing in his talent even when he doubted himself. She was also the person who kept him grounded, reminding him of what really mattered when the temptations of street life and quick money tried to pull him in dangerous directions. But in December 1989, everything changed. Isabella discovered she was pregnant, at 17, with Joey just starting his music career and both of them barely making ends meet. A baby felt like a dream killer rather than a blessing. They argued for weeks about what to do, with Joey insisting they could make it work and Isabella terrified that a baby would trap them both in poverty forever. What Isabella did next destroyed both their lives. Without telling Joey, Isabella made the most difficult decision of her life. She terminated the pregnancy and then disappeared from his life completely, moving to California to live with relatives. She left him a brief letter saying she needed to focus on her education and that she thought they both needed to pursue their dreams separately. She never mentioned the pregnancy or the abortion, carrying that secret alone for 20 years. Joey was devastated by her sudden departure and the coldness of her goodbye letter. He threw himself into his music with desperate intensity, using his heartbreak as fuel for lyrics about loss, betrayal, and the pain of being abandoned by someone you trusted completely. Some of his most powerful early songs were written about Isabella, though he never used her real name and never told anyone the real story behind his emotional performances. What neither of them knew was that Isabella's decision to leave had been influenced by Joey's mother Maria, who had convinced Isabella that staying would ruin both their lives. Maria had seen too many young couples in their neighborhood get trapped in cycles of poverty and broken dreams, and she believed that Joey's only chance at success required him to be free of family responsibilities. She had given Isabella money for bus fare to California, and had promised to take care of Joey's heartbreak. 20 years later, Isabella's return wasn't about romance, it was about justice. Isabella had become a successful nurse practitioner in Los Angeles, married a good man, raised 2 children, and built a stable, productive life. But she had never forgotten Joey or stopped following his career from a distance. She watched him become Fat Joe, celebrated his successes, and always wondered what would have happened if they had made different choices in 1989. The envelope she carried contained 2 things: a letter explaining everything that had really happened 20 years ago, and medical records showing that she had been diagnosed with a rare genetic condition that would likely be passed to any children she might have had. The pregnancy termination that had seemed like a selfish choice in 1989 was actually a medical necessity that she had been too young and scared to understand at the time. But there was something else in the envelope that would shock Joey even more than the truth about their past. Isabella had discovered that Maria, Joey's mother, had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia and was struggling financially despite Joey's success. Maria had been too proud to tell Joey about her diagnosis, afraid of becoming a burden on his career. Isabella had come to the concert not just to reveal the truth about their past, but to make sure Joey knew about his mother's condition. When their eyes met across the stadium, 20 years of questions finally had answers. During the concert's intermission, Joey's security team brought Isabella backstage. The reunion was awkward, emotional, and filled with 20 years of unspoken pain and regret. Isabella looked at the successful man Joey had become amidst confident, wealthy, famous, loved by millions, and saw both the boy she had fallen in love with, and a stranger who had built his life on the foundation of their shared heartbreak. "I know this is probably the worst possible time and place for this conversation," Isabella said, holding out the envelope, "but I couldn't wait any longer. There are things you need to know about why I left, about your mother, about decisions we made when we were too young to understand their consequences." Joey took the envelope but didn't open it immediately. "Isabella, seeing you here tonight, I thought I was hallucinating. I thought about you every day for the first 5 years after you left. Then I tried to forget you. Then I spent the last 10 years wondering if I had imagined how good we were together. We were good together, Joey. We were everything we thought we were. But we were also 17 and 18 years old, dealing with situations that would challenge adults twice our age." What Isabella told him next changed everything he thought he knew about his life. Isabella explained about the pregnancy, the abortion, the genetic condition, and his mother's role in her decision to leave. She told him about the guilt she had carried for 20 years, wondering if she had robbed him of a chance at fatherhood and family happiness. She also told him about watching his career from a distance, being proud of his success but always wondering if it had been worth the price they both paid. "The baby would have had severe developmental disabilities," Isabella said, showing him the medical records. "I didn't know that at the time. I just knew I was scared and 17 and felt like I couldn't handle being a mother. But the genetic testing I had done years later showed that terminating the pregnancy was actually the right medical decision." Joey processed this information slowly, understanding for the first time that Isabella's departure hadn't been about not loving him enough, but about loving him too much to trap him in a situation that would have been devastating for everyone involved. But the most shocking revelation was still coming. "Joey, there's something else. Your mother is sick. She has early-stage dementia and she's been hiding it from you because she doesn't want to interfere with your career. She's also struggling financially because she's too proud to ask you for help, and she's been giving money to family members who are taking advantage of her condition." The news about his mother hit Joey harder than everything else Isabella had told him. He had been so focused on his career, his success, his own life that he hadn't noticed his mother's struggles. The woman who had raised him, supported his dreams, and sacrificed everything for his success, was facing her greatest challenge alone while he performed for stadiums full of strangers. "How do you know about my mother's condition?" Joey asked. "Because she called me 6 months ago. She tracked me down in Los Angeles because she needed someone to talk to about her diagnosis, someone who cared about you but wasn't part of your current life. She wanted advice about whether to tell you, and she wanted to apologize for the role she played in my decision to leave 20 years ago." The conversation that followed rewrote both their life stories. Joey and Isabella talked for 2 hours, covering 20 years of separate experiences, missed opportunities, and parallel lives. They talked about the choices they had made, the prices they had paid, and the people they had become. Most importantly, they talked about forgiveness, forgiving themselves, each other, and his mother for decisions made with good intentions but incomplete information. "I need to ask you something," Joey said finally. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had stayed together, worked through the problems instead of running away from them?" Isabella smiled sadly. "I think about it all the time, but I also think we both became people we needed to become by going through the pain of separation. You became Fat Joe because you channeled heartbreak into art. I became a nurse because I wanted to help other young women avoid making decisions out of fear and ignorance." "So what happens now?" Joey asked. "After 20 years, where do we go from here?" "Now you take care of your mother," Isabella said, "and maybe we figure out how to be friends instead of strangers carrying old hurt." 6 months later, the impact of Isabella's return had transformed Joey's entire life. Joey immediately got his mother the best medical care available for her dementia, including experimental treatments that slowed the progression of her condition. He also hired a full-time care coordinator and moved her into a beautiful apartment near his home so he could be part of her daily life instead of just sending money from a distance. His relationship with Isabella evolved into a deep platonic friendship based on mutual respect and shared history. She helped him understand his mother's condition and become a better caregiver, while he provided emotional support as she went through her own divorce and career changes. They never rekindled their romantic relationship, but they became important people in each other's lives again. The experience of reconnecting with Isabella and caring for his mother's illness changed Joey's entire approach to relationships and success. He realized that fame and money were meaningless if the people he loved were suffering alone. His music became more personal, more focused on family, loyalty, and the importance of being present for the people who matter most. The Yankee Stadium concert became a turning point, not just because of Isabella's return, but because of what her courage taught him about facing difficult truths. Fat Joe began using his platform to raise awareness about dementia and Alzheimer's disease, especially in Latino communities where these conditions were often misunderstood or stigmatized. He established a foundation that provided resources for families dealing with dementia, and he became an advocate for research into treatments for neurocognitive disorders. He also became more intentional about maintaining relationships with people from his past, understanding that success could create isolation if you weren't careful to preserve connections with people who knew you before you became famous. Isabella's willingness to return after 20 years with difficult truths taught him that real love sometimes means saying things that are hard to hear. This is why Fat Joe's later music became so much more emotionally mature and family-focused. His reunion with Isabella didn't give him back his first love, but it gave him something more valuable: the truth about his past, and a motivation to be present for the people who mattered most in his future. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is the courage to face reality, even when that reality is painful. Isabella's return taught him that love doesn't always mean staying together. Sometimes it means caring enough to tell the truth, even after 20 years of silence. The story of Isabella's return also became a powerful example of how women often carry the emotional burden of difficult decisions about family planning and relationships. Her courage to come forward after 2 decades inspired other women to share their stories about choices made in difficult circumstances, creating conversations about support systems for young women. Joey's experience as a caregiver for his mother with dementia changed his perspective on success. He realized that all the money and recognition couldn't buy back time with loved ones or prevent the pain of watching someone you love struggle with illness. His advocacy work became as important as his music career. Most importantly, Isabella's return taught them that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, and that love can transform into different but equally valuable forms of connection. They never tried to recreate their teenage romance, but they built something better: a friendship based on truth and mutual respect.